Cool. Welcome to another episode of The Path to You. Today we're joined by Sherry Platt. Thank you for joining me today,
Thanks
Sherry.
for having me.
Yeah. So as we start every episode, Sherry, how did you get here?
I want to say by car, but I know all your guests say that. I just am, right?
Mm-hmm. Just am here.
Yeah, I am just here. I'm here with you in this beautiful location.
Yeah. Can you share where we are?
Yeah, so we're in San Ramon, California, and we are at an accelerator program called BRIA. I can never remember what BRIA stands for, but if you're interested, it's the Bishop Ranch Innovative something. But basically, it's an accelerator program. A lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Takes on new companies. This one happens to be focused on artificial intelligence, but startup companies that have an idea, have a dream, have a plan, but need to know and need to learn how to execute it. And then after there's many accelerator programs throughout the Bay Area. It's really an exciting environment. I think there's one other one in the Tri-County area, and they're throughout Oakland, San Francisco, everywhere. South Bay, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's across the country, but basically they take these companies, these early stage companies, and they put them through. Some are 6 weeks, some are 3 months programs, and then at the end they present in front of potential investors. Right.
Cool.
So I am I'm a mentor here,
Okay.
and so I work with the early stage companies to develop talent strategies. And so I've been a recruiter and a career counselor for over 20 years. And with early stage, it's very different because a lot of times they don't have funding.
Right.
They are often looking for co-founders, C-level staff like CTOs, etc. And how do you entice people to come work for your company when you don't have necessarily any money to offer them?
Right.
The truth is, there's plenty of people who will do it. But you have to find it. So we do it, and then once they get their fundings, early stage talent acquisition is a very different conversation for an established company or an established small business.
Right.
So that's what BRIA is.
Okay.
We have you've seen it, we have a whole floor of offices, and people can come here and work here on a monthly basis. It's like a WeWork space also.
Got it.
So lots of great conference rooms, and I know you can't see it, but it's just beautiful here in San Ramon.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I had heard of Bishop Ranch, and for some reason I always thought it was linked to Chevron. I think
Chevron's across the street.
Right. But I just assumed that it was just a bunch of oil companies that was here.
Right.
And
No, it's a lot of businesses from major corporations to smaller companies further down in the different Bishop branches. So, so that's where we are right now.
Yeah. And it kind of looks like a Google campus, to be honest.
It does. And if you want more information on BRIA and just to learn more, you can go to BRIA, BRIIA I believe it's IO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. How did you get involved with BRIA?
So I've had a lot of different careers under the umbrella of recruiter and career counselor. My last gig was 2.5 years at St. Mary's College. I was the Associate Director of Career Services for the Business Graduate Program. And they hired me to come in and build a career center that hadn't existed for business graduates before.
Interesting.
So I've always been 3 things: a recruiter, a talent strategist, a career counselor, and a program developer. So I'm often hired by companies to come in and build programs, often around career management or recruiting, so like university recruiting programs, etc. And years ago, I was doing that for transitional housing programs for the homeless and creating work programs to get people felons and homeless out of the transitional housing and into the workforce.
Got it.
So how I got here was that I had a student, an alumni, come visit me at St. Mary's College who had an opportunity to start BRIA and wasn't sure at the time if she should do it, and so we talked about it, and after a conversation she decided that she wanted to work with BRIA to help them establish themselves. I mean, I think they're just I think they were only 1 year old.
Oh, wow.
And we actually met out here for a cup of coffee.
Oh.
And she asked if I would be a mentor to the startups around recruiting and talent strategy. And I said yes. And it's been wonderful ever since. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah. And so how did you get to this point in your career? So you were a recruiter at St. Mary's, or you're building the program at St. Mary's. What do you do now, and how did you get there?
So right now I am a talent strategist and recruiter I call myself an a la carte recruiter.
Okay.
Right? I came up with this idea about 20 years ago when I was working for employment agencies. And nothing has really changed with employment agencies. Basically, they are still charging the same extraordinarily high fees to place individuals in companies.
Right.
And small businesses can't afford the $15,000 to $25,000 fees that employment agencies charge. So, like I said, 20 years ago, I had this idea that we offer all of the services an employment agency would offer, but we offer it on a piecemeal basis. So small business owners are very hands-on. They like to be involved in the process. They can't usually afford a recruiter, full-time recruiter, and they can't afford an employment agency, but they still need help because they are inundated by, if they put a job ad out, then they're going to be inundated by applicants. And to go through all the resumes and screen all the candidates is extraordinarily time consuming and wasteful. So I come in and we have a discussion about, well, what do you need? Everything from writing a job description to posting the job descriptions to screening the candidates to training their staff how to hire, right? So they're not dependent on people like me or employment agencies, and I just help with what they need. And business owners love it.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with the tech companies. And I do tech recruiting also. So I look for full stack engineers, and you have to stay relevant in the Bay Area to stay employed.
Yeah.
So relevant means learning how to find full stack engineers and yeah. So that's what I'm doing right now. Have you ever heard of a portfolio career?
Actually, I just heard about it this past weekend.
So it's very common for creative people to have portfolio careers, which is doing a variety of different things. So I'm doing this. I'm still doing my career counseling practice, both through Skype and Zoom nationally. And also I have an office on Saturdays where I see private clients in Walnut Creek. And I'm also going through a vegan lifestyle certification program in September, which I'm really excited about. And then, I'm also thinking about this project of starting a diners, drive-ins, and dives version of vegan restaurants.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are up on my plate. And continuing to mentor here, really lovely people, as you met earlier.
Yeah. And so I know that you have, your undergrad is in broadcasting and journalism.
Correct.
Where did the shift take place?
So I was actually a radio disc jockey for 6 years. I was 3 years on campus and then 3 years in a real radio station in Orlando, Florida. And I was one of the first afternoon drive female disc jockeys in the country, really.
Wow.
There was only a handful of us back then. And I fell into radio. I didn't plan on going into radio. But I don't know if I fell in love with it, but I was very good at it. And I had a good voice, and I was able to stay very cool in very heated, unpredictable situations. I still have radio nightmares 30 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. When I'm tense about something else, I always end up back in the studio, not being able to reach the commercials or being able, it's just everything that could go wrong. So it was live, there was no pre-recorded anything. Right. So, if you made a mistake, which I did, then it was recorded and everybody could hear you. So at 26, I was bored and I knew I didn't want to do it professionally for the rest of my life. Also, I would have to start from scratch. So to get to an afternoon drive disc jockey in a small radio market, I had to work midnight to 6 through college. So I was midnight to 6 while I was on campus, and then I got a job off campus, and then I was working the morning drive. So I was working from 6 a.m. to 10, but you have to get in the studio at 4. So I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to leave a market and go to another market, bigger market where I could get paid more and have to start from scratch. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So how did I get into this? I went home and to Miami and tried to work for my father. That lasted 6 weeks, and we fired each other. And then I got on a plane, and I did this quite a bit in my life, and moved to Boston. I had a friend there, and my dad at the time had a contact at Coopers and Lybrand.
Cooper's the tire company?
Yeah, exactly. So no, Coopers was one of the big 8 accounting firms. And he thought I should go work for them because it was a stable job.
Okay.
Right? I did get the job offer, but I refused to accept it because I didn't want to work in accounting. Can you imagine me in accounting? And then, but in the elevator, from the interview, I was coming down and these doors opened up to an employment agency, John Leonard Personnel. And I walked in and I thought, I don't need that job. I can take any job.
Yeah.
And I just went and interviewed for, I didn't know what I was interviewing for, but I thought maybe a temp job because I knew I wanted to move to Boston. And by the time I was finished with all the interviewing, I got to the permanent consultant, and he said, what do you want? And I said, I want to do this. And he said, do what? I said, I want to do what you're doing. And he said, have you done it before? I said, I was a radio disc jockey for 6 years. I've interviewed people, famous musicians.
Right.
I can do this.
Yeah.
And he said, well, the only job I have right now that we have is an outside sales rep, and it's literally snowing behind him. He said, nobody wants to work outside. I said, I do.
Yeah.
He said, oh, so I got the job.
Cool.
And that's when I started knocking on doors and cold calling and meeting HR people and talking about employment and business owners. And so that foundation makes me very good at what I do now. Right. It's my recruiting foundation, but it's also my career counseling foundation because I understand very clearly what employers need, and I understand very clearly how to prep people to meet with employers. I mean, it's a longer story. I can keep going. I don't know how long you have, but that's how it got started.
Yeah.
Decided I loved it. Went for I was going to volunteer at Jewish Vocational Services in the city. And they liked my background so much, they said, don't volunteer, come work with us. And so then I started working as a job developer, which is kind of the same thing.
Okay.
In the nonprofit sector, working with adults with disabilities.
Got it.
And so my job was to prep them and then to go to employers and help them get employed.
Okay.
And that's when I decided I wanted my master's degree.
Oh, okay. So you had already worked in the field and then decided you wanted to get your master's.
Yeah, so you can't really, there's a lot of career coaches out there right now, but you can't call yourself a career counselor unless you have a master's degree.
Got it.
And so I wanted the master's.
Okay.
And went to graduate school. First job out was a job in building a university recruiting program for a very large tech company. And it's just sort of gone on from there.
Yeah. So you created the STEPS career system.
Correct.
Can you explain what that is and how you came to develop that?
Sure.
Loaded question.
No, it's not a loaded question. It's a long question. I want to. So when I went out on my own about 15 years ago, I hired a business consultant, and the business consultant gave me the best piece of advice anybody's ever given me, which is always know what your process is and be able to articulate that to your clients.
Got it.
And until you know your process, you're never really going to be able to sell yourself.
Got it.
So that was it wasn't something I just picked up, but over time I realized there actually was a process I was taking people through that was unique. Then I started the Career Wisdom Institute with a business partner, Julie Gleason, and we did that for about 6 years. And in the Career Wisdom Institute, we created sort of an early version of the STEPS. It wasn't called the STEPS then, but we created the framework for how we started working with people around planning their careers.
Yeah.
And then when I went to St. Mary's College, I brought that with me, but it couldn't be the same because I was seeing such high volume clients that I had to make sure the system that we had created, I retweaked it so that it worked more quickly, right?
Got it.
because I only had a certain period of time with the students.
Right.
So the STEPS career system is basically, in order for us to make good career decisions, we have to have the following answered. What am I in service of? What are the themes of my life? What are the skills that I want to use? Of the skills that I have, what are the skills I want to use?
Right.
And what is the experience I want to have at work? So I think people are very quick to say, I want a job as a social media person, or I want a job as a YouTube interviewer, but those are just job titles. I mean, the word job comes from the Gaelic term gop. And gop means mouthful.
That's funny.
So, this is it was like the whole history of work is going through my head. But prior to the Industrial Revolution, we didn't have 8-hour-a-day jobs in factories. It was the factories that turned us into 8-hour-a-day, Monday through Friday. It was 7 days a week then until the unions kicked in. But so that's when our world changed. But our world is changing back now to what it was like before. And so in terms of what do people want, when they go for a job, the very first thing they think of is the job title. But really where we need to start is, what is the experience I want to have next? How do I want that to feel? So when I was an entrepreneur, I got very lonely. And I missed having a collaborative work environment. And then after I did that for a while, I wanted to be lonely again. They say that people work in 7-year cycles, especially entrepreneurs, 7 years on, 7 years off. So the experience of what you want is important, and the parameters, which are the practicalities of life. How much money do I need to make? What does my time look like? How far is my commute? I mean, look how much you hated coming here in the morning.
It was only, really it should have taken me 15 minutes.
Exactly.
And it took me half an hour.
Yep. So some people don't want to deal with that. In fact, part of why BRIA was created was because they're trying to get people to stay within Tri-Valley area. Because people don't want to commute anymore. It's a nightmare. So those are all the practicalities. And we look at the skills that you want to, of all the skills you've acquired over the course of your lifetime, what are the skills you want to use? And what is that called? And then what are you in service of? So that's the steps. So very simple. People usually know, if people come to me, I always ask them 2 questions. What do you want, and who do you want to do it for? So if you can't answer those 2 questions, we figure out what you want to do, and then we figure out who you want to do it for, and then we plan a job search.
Got it. So for people that want to work, that want to collaborate, how did you choose to work with Julie?
Yeah. So Julie was in my BNI group, and BNI is Business Networking International, and it's a really great way for small to medium-sized business owners to network. It's very popular. They're all over the country, all over the world. And I met Julie there. Julie taught something called the principles, and she taught the principles of thought. And so the reason why I asked her to work with me and create the Career Wisdom Institute is that what I've discovered is, after many years of listening to people talk about their careers, is that people actually do know what they want. They just don't know that they can have it. Right. So after, sometimes it's my job to clear away all the blocks that have stopped people from, especially artists, musicians, etc. But everybody has this. And I liked Julie's framework for working with people around thinking, because it was very simple, very short and very simple. And that's how the Career Wisdom Institute came into being. So that's how I met Julie. I liked her work. I asked her if she wanted to collaborate, and then we wrote a book called Inside Job, 8 Secrets to Loving Your Work and Thriving. And we talk a lot about the principles in that book. So I don't tie the principles in as much now, because that was really Julie's area of expertise. But I know a lot about neurology, neurological programming, and we definitely talk about that in my work with clients.
So 2 questions stem off of that for me. The second question, no, I want to ask you the first question. I was doing some research and I saw a blog post that you wrote about, I think it was self-love being one of the foundations of your career.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily what you know, but it was like compassion, self-love, like these core values of life.
Correct.
Can you talk about how you came to that process? Because you don't, I mean, you talk to CEOs and other people, and that's not necessarily the first thing that they look for in
I'm not sure that's entirely, I'm not sure that's always true.
Okay.
I think good CEOs actually do look for that.
True.
So our Western culture believes that you have to suffer to work.
Right.
And it's actually the thought that keeps us suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get free and have work you love if you fundamentally believe that you have to suffer at your work.
Right.
So, I mean, the history of why people believe they have to suffer at work is fascinating. I mean, it's a lot of our country is built on immigrants. And I'm first generation.
Yeah.
And I come from Holocaust survivors. So there's a lot of stuff there that I've had to work through.
Sure.
You come from an
Philippines.
exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people come here from trauma. They come here because they've been traumatized. And so they're very set on, it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you do it, even if you have to suffer. And they did. So I'm not taking away anything from that. I think that was a reality.
Yep.
But they did that so that the next generation would have a better life.
Yep.
The challenge is, though, is that this belief, I mean, we could also go down to the Puritan work ethic, right? We could also have conversations about believing that we're born into sin, right? So it's deeply suffering and the belief that we can't actually be happy.
Right.
And so all of that creates self-hatred and a lack of self-respect. And so you can't actually make changes in your life for the better if you are still ensconced in the concepts of pain and suffering and I don't deserve and I can't be happy. Because if that's what you're wanting to do, then you're just going to keep replicating your cycle. So it doesn't matter if you come to me and we work and we get you out of one job and put you into the next. If you're still having the same thoughts and the same belief systems, you're going to have the same experience.
Yeah.
So all of this starts with learning to love yourself enough to believe that you deserve to be happy and that you are worthy of proper compensation and to be valued.
Yeah.
And until you believe that, no one else is going to believe that.
Yeah. Because what you're thinking about yourself is essentially what you're projecting onto what other people are thinking about you.
Yeah. And we attract, right? So I always say to people, when you're in the job search process, like people will say, well, I don't want to work for another big company and I don't want to work for another asshole and I don't want to, and I'm like, okay, good. Now let's look at what's the positive conversation around that.
Yeah.
I want to work with good people. I want to work with a cause I believe in. I want to, right? Because the universe is going to give you whatever you ask for. It doesn't denote between negative and positive. So speak positively so that the universe knows how it can show up for you.
Yeah. The power of words.
It's very important.
Very important. So for people that hate their job, hate what they're doing, what do you think is that first step to break out of that?
Well, let me tell you what I've learned over time about people who stay in jobs they hate. One of three things will happen. You'll get fired, you'll get sick, or the company will disappear. It took a long time for me to figure out why companies disappear. And then I realized that if companies support negative environments and continue to employ people that they clearly know are miserable, the company can't sustain itself in the long run. It will break down. So it's really a matter of health and well-being. So the first step is exactly what we just talked about. The first step is that you have to believe that you deserve to be happy. Or else it's all a waste of time. So you have to believe that you deserve to be happy, and you have to believe that you are worthy of goodness and joy. And right. And people say that that's very woo-woo. And it's not. Because if you look at the most successful people, they love what they do. They're passionate about it. I mean, you know, I work surrounded by CEOs and co-founders. The thing I love about accelerator programs and small businesses is that business is nothing more than the physical realization of a dream.
Yep.
That's really all it is.
Yep.
Somebody had an idea, they believed in themselves enough that they were able to articulate it and bring it into reality.
Yeah.
And so the same thing is true for a person who, I mean, why are you seeking a job, right? What is the foundation? So if the foundation is, I hate my life, I hate my boss, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, then you're just going to bring in more of this.
Yeah.
It really has to be, I want to be happy. I want to make an impact. Everybody wants to know that their work counts. A lot of people want to feel validated.
Yeah.
I'm a little challenged by people who are determining what they're going to do by validation. I think that's what gets us into trouble to begin with.
Yep.
But, you know, wanting to work with collaborative people, like, you have to think in terms of the very first thing you have to do is like, I deserve to be happy. I deserve this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm worthwhile.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then it's very hard to make a change.
Yeah.
So that's step one.
Yeah. Because if the business idea that you had wasn't something that you were actually passionate about, it's going to fail.
It won't work.
It won't work.
It'll only come, it's only like half born, or
Yeah.
only half shows up, or, yeah.
Yeah. Because when I did that nonprofit with the Empower Hour and working with the kids, it worked for that first year. And then when I tried to get out of me being the one teaching and teaching teachers how to teach what I was teaching, there was interest, but it had all just kind of trickled away. I was like, okay, this isn't meant to be.
Or it served its purpose.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, when Career Wisdom Institute didn't turn into what I thought it was going to be, I never thought of it as a failure.
Right.
Because we helped so many people
Right.
in the time that we were there. There's a lot of really interesting stories about how that karma comes back for me. I'm actually currently recruiting for a company that was started by a woman who went through my workshop. We didn't even know that when we met.
Yeah.
And then when we met, I recognized her, and she said, you are the reason I am here now. So because I got confidence and clarity and was able to move forward. So, you know, that irony was just crazy cool.
Yeah. And when someone says that to you,
that was really crazy, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Even as a recruiter, you know, making the connections between really good people to really good employers is very fulfilling.
Yeah. Who do you choose to work with?
I'll only work, I can hear so many answers to that. So I'm filtering. I only work with people who I'm aligned with.
Right.
That's the positive version.
Yeah.
So as long as they're doing good work in the world and they're good people and they provide a good work environment, because I won't recruit for people who, I won't represent people who are bringing in people into bad environments. Right. So I have to, you know, recruiting is sales. So I don't think you can sell anything unless you really believe in your product. Right. So I make sure that I believe in my product.
Yeah. I want to switch gears and talk about your vegan diners, drive-ins, and dives. How did you come up with that concept?
Well, I'll be vegan 3 years.
Okay.
This month, and you know, I'm very passionate about this for many reasons. I'm passionate for the animals. I'm passionate for the environment, and I'm passionate for health. And there are a lot of really cool. First of all, it's a huge trend, right? I mean, Beyond Meat is so popular that Whole Foods can't keep it in stock. They've had to open a new manufacturing plant.
Oh wow!
And because they can't. And the Whole Foods people have said that the minute it comes in, it's gone. And even for people who are not vegans, like even meat eaters. So, you know, I think the world is waking up and they're seeing that that it's killing us. And it's killing our planet. You know, I had somebody ask me recently, don't plants have feelings?
Yeah,
and
pretty sure that was me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was you. And I thought about that a lot afterwards, and I'm reading a book now that talks about how to answer questions like that. And so, you know, the answer is really we're not sure. We do know there's not a central nervous system, but more importantly than that, the level of plants that have to be sacrificed to feed the meat industry is crazy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's killing us. I mean, not just physically, but environmentally. So if I can do anything to help promote, like I think another reason why people don't become plant-based vegans, and I choose vegan, a lot of people choose plant-based because for just different philosophical reasons. But the reason why I think people don't do it is because they don't know how to do it.
Right.
And they don't know that there's options.
Yeah. And
if people are gutsy enough to open up vegan businesses, I want to be there to support them. And to just let people know. I took my wife to Solely Vegan on July 4th. That is not healthy vegan food, but it is delicious vegan food. Have you eaten there before?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And the owner is like meeting a goddess when you meet her.
Yeah.
She's very charismatic and warm and just lovely.
Yeah.
And we had a fantastic meal. And the place was packed, right?
It's always packed.
Always packed. Always a line out the door. And she's done a successful, ethical business.
Yeah, it's been there a long
time. Yeah, so she was ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
There's Veggie Grill in Walnut Creek, line out the door all the time.
There's a bunch of those places now in Walnut Creek, which I was happily surprised to see. There's Veggie Grill, and then there's the other one that's, I think, over by the Macy's.
Oh, True Foods.
Yes.
So True Foods is, they're great. My son works there. They have a very good vegan selection. I mean, they're meat, they're both. But I went there yesterday with a friend I took her for her birthday. She was buying the lunch. I'm not sure how that happened, but the goal was good. The intention was good. But, we go there, and she's an interesting story too, because her husband is a gastrointestinal doctor at Kaiser.
Oh, you talked about this.
And he read the China study at the same time that I read the China study, and not knowing that we were each reading it, and both went vegan after that. And so she said she's a vegan 5 days a week, and then eats whatever she wants on the weekend, which is fine. Yeah. But it's so we choose True Foods because it has such a good menu.
Right.
So that might be a place that I focus on, but I don't think so. I think I'd focus mostly on vegan restaurants, and there's such a huge growth in this market that it would be great to work with that and to support business owners, which clearly is the theme in my life. And so this would be vegan restaurant owners. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm not sure how I'm going to make it happen yet, but it starts with a dream. And then you just allow it to blossom.
Yeah, cool. So, I think if I have any other questions based off of that.
The vegan thing?
Yeah.
I am becoming a vegan certified coach.
Yeah.
In September. I just know it's in New York. It's 6 days. It's with Victoria Moran, who's sort of the, really well established. She's written multiple cookbooks, is very outspoken in the animal rights community. So I'm excited about that. Participating in DXE. Which is Direct Action Everywhere, and that is an animal rights activist group, does good work, non-violent, but very good work, and also Anonymous for the Voiceless. I'm trying to get them to come to Walnut Creek, Broadway Plaza. Thank you, Walnut Creek will be thanking me for that. And I think, again, it's just education. I think people are really good. I believe fundamentally people are good. They're just, we're all just brainwashed and uninformed.
Yep.
So I think the more we can inform people, the better decisions will be made.
And so being a coach, what does that mean?
So I'm hoping that I will, the reason why I tied in the doctor is that since he read the China study and became vegan, he now works with his patients to help them go vegan, and he teaches classes, but he can't coach them through it.
Right.
So I could see working with doctors who are encouraging their clients their patients to go vegan, but people don't know how, and so helping people with that. And I ran into a woman at the Whole Foods 365 in Concord, which for some strange reason has a phenomenal vegan section, much better than the San Ramon or Walnut Creek. I don't know why, but there was a woman there in line, and she had all her they have a lot of Beyond Beef packages, and I just asked her, and she said, "Yeah, I'm going vegan, and I'm really excited about it." And and I want to spread it out to more people in different communities too. The LGBT community, the African American community, the different ethnic communities, although I think a lot of ethnic communities already have the jump on it, because like Indian and Chinese and Thai, and I sat next to a Filipino young man this week who is vegan, and I did a Qigong seminar all day on Sunday, and he said it's been really challenging to turn the Filipino foods into vegan.
Yep.
And he said the first thing you have to do is just let go of the fact that they're going to taste exactly like that. Yep. And once you let go of that, it's easier to make the transition.
Yeah. There was a vegan Filipino restaurant in Oakland. Didn't last.
Oh.
And I think because exactly that,
Yeah.
people were expecting it to taste like mom or dad's home cooking, which it does, just a little different.
Yeah, and people sometimes, if you're not committed, you have to. And they talk about that. They say that the biggest thing people struggle with is letting go of their, their comfort foods, their ethnic, their foods that they grew up with. And I can assure you, matzo balls taste just as good with aquafaba instead of eggs.
Yeah.
So
it's the same texture.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Don't have to use eggs. So that's the hope. And in the other answer to your questions, I don't know. I don't know what I'm kind of just going to have fun.
Yeah.
And to learn and to see where it takes me. One of the things I learned at the Qigong workshop is called radical acceptance.
Why have I heard this before?
Because it's a big Buddhist teaching, radical acceptance. And I love that conversation, because what it basically, and it ties into this conversation, which is, I am changing and I don't know what I'm going to become.
It's that acceptance of the unknown.
Yeah, and only when we get to that place can we allow new stuff to come in, right? So in the book, in an Inside Job, we talk about the stages, and for everything there's a beginning, and for everything there's a period of fulfillment. It comes into fruition, and then it ends, and then there is this in-between place. That nobody wants to be in. Yep. Stage
that I've been sitting in for the last couple months.
Yep. And in the Buddhist world, it's called the in-between place. Yep. And there's that place has a name in almost every mystical tradition, and every purgatory, in Western tradition, Western transitions counseling with William Bridges, he called it. Oh my God, I just forgot what he called it, but he has a whole name for that area also. And so we called it the period of rest, renewal, and reflection. And unless you sit there, it's also a period of incubation, right? So if you're an artist, you know that you can't end something. Often you can if you're getting inspired. But often we have to sit in this incubation period before you move to the next thing. And
it's not necessarily a fun period.
It often is not. It is not at first. When I was teaching those career wisdom groups, everybody was like, no, going in.
Yeah. I just had the rest. What?
and then when they got there, and they slowed down, and they came back into themselves, and they meditated, or they played, or and then people would say, I can't afford to do that. Well, we talk about getting vacation jobs, right? And doing something that will make you an income but may not create the same stress level. Maybe you're not commuting as far, maybe you're closer to home. And you give yourself that time to breathe and let something new come up. And that's radical awareness. That's acceptance and awareness, right?
Yeah.
And so until you give yourself that space, it's hard for something new to begin. So what do I think I'm going to do with the vegan certification? I think I'm going to do that. The truth is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
How did you get to that point of radical acceptance? Like, how did you get to this point of, I'm okay not knowing?
Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of therapy. Different modes of healing, and shamanic, healings, and like I said, I have a great therapist. I have to say, at 45, I came out as a lesbian. I got divorced. I lost a community, and started from scratch. Yeah. And none of that could have happened if I didn't have a spiritual foundation. Right. And for me, it was Buddhism. Okay. And Judaism. Yeah. But the tools came from, the tools came from Buddhism, spirit rock,
Spirit Rock in Marin?
Oh yeah, I'm a big Spirit Rock. I haven't done it in recent, but that was definitely a landing space for me with great teachers. And Chokmah Taleb in Berkeley, there was a rabbi there named Avram Davis, and he taught a Jewish meditation class. And I think I came into meditation that way. Did my first silent retreat. By the way, Jews can't be silent for long periods of time, so that was a good introduction because it was easy. And then transitioned over to Spirit Rock and did some day-longs and then week-longs and Vipassana, exactly. So that's how. I mean, this does not happen. There are not always moments. I panic about not having enough money, and then I realize that, and then I realize it. And you know, part of it is recognizing that I'm triggered, and then having compassion for the fact that I'm triggered. So that's how I get to here. And I'm still a long way away from wherever it is I need to get to go. I never assume that I'm arrived.
I think you arrive when you die.
I think you keep going when you die.
I mean, I think in this body you arrive.
Correct.
When you die.
When you pass. Yes, I agree with that.
There's also the thought of when your spirit has lived its last life, and then you just join the collective consciousness, which is another Buddhist thought. Well,
yeah, I think, Buddhism's interesting because, you know, they try very hard to stay away from spiritual conversations. And that's one of the things I kind of like about Buddhism, and which makes it very approachable. But at the same time, I don't think they can do that with a whole lot of purity, because what they're talking about is, you know, pushing away all the thoughts. As Tara Brach, I was listening to her this morning, she's talking about how we wear these spacesuits in our lives, like the ego that keeps us safe. And then when we realize that it's also the ego that keeps us trapped. Right? And all this ties into work too, by the way, right? It's a whole continuum of conversation around employment. And then as we let go of the spacesuit and we find out who we are, like that is God. She wouldn't use the term God, but she would use the term you, right? The real you, true self. And I think for me, true self is divinity.
Yeah. Oh, I could go into a whole tangent with that. I think I'm going to bring it back.
Okay.
We got some time. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have time?
I think I've got like 20 minutes.
Okay.
So you came out when you're 45. Did you, I think I was watching, what was I watching the other day? Sex and the City. And there was
I've watched that 3 times.
There was a scene between Stanford and Anthony where they're talking about the prom that Stanford's going to, and he's taking his boyfriend. And he's like, I remember my prom. I didn't go with my girlfriend. And Anthony interjects and says, because you were gay. And he's like, no, I didn't know I was gay then. I found out when. He's like, you were born. So when you came out at 45, had you kind of always known?
I think that I probably am. I mean, I don't feel that way right now, but I'm probably profoundly bisexual.
Okay.
Enough to be confused.
Okay.
So, but when I was 14, I came out to my mom. I said to my mom, I love women. I keep falling in love with women. And my mom just said, that's nice, dear, you'll get over it. You know, I mean, it wasn't like I was scarred.
Right.
So, about that.
That in particular.
That in particular. But I think I've always fallen in love with women. Even though I've enjoyed many men, I think I've always fallen deeply in love with women. And I didn't know what to do with that.
Right.
And I had no role models.
Right.
And being a child of Holocaust survivors, my job was to procreate 6 million Jews.
Yes.
And get married and have a family. And I think there just wasn't space. But there was always something there. And I'm sure that a lot of it was shame.
Sure.
And not knowing, and being terrified of knowing.
Yeah.
And but again, you know, the journey to self-realization and a lot of that started when I gave birth to my first son, because he was born with a heart defect, and which, thank God, he had surgery, but it was a very rough way to begin parenting. And but it did set me back on a path of meditation. So that was, I mean, Sam will be 20 this year, so 20 years ago. And so as I started to pull back the spacesuit, I realized gradually who I was and what I wanted. And also, I had a crappy marriage. I didn't marry a very nice person. And even as we were going through counseling towards the end, the therapist made it very clear that I was leaving not because I was gay, but because the marriage was bad. So, yeah, I think. But I get asked that question all the time. And I think some people are more profoundly aware of the fact that they are who they are.
Right.
And I think some of us are not.
Yeah.
And 45 is a magic age. So it's there are some theories around why that happens at 45 that are fascinating. But also the majority of my clients who come to me for career counseling are 45. It's just a very transitional period for people.
Yeah.
It's like men and women, I mean, they sort of start to wake up. So I had a great experience, which woke me up, and then I knew that there was nothing wrong with me, and there had never been anything wrong with me, and I got a divorce.
Yeah. So you said you think you're profoundly bisexual.
I think I was.
Do you think that you are strictly lesbian now? Okay.
Yeah, I think once you have women, you never go back. Why would I?
How funny.
I mean, if you really want to know my theory, I think we're all innately, naturally homosexual.
You are not the first person that has said that.
And I'm not, and my wife always wants me to be quiet about this, but I don't want to be quiet about it. I think that all the years I sat out in my little minivan picking up my children from school, I watched children with each other. It is natural for boys to be with boys and for girls to be with girls until they are socialized differently. And that is my theory.
Right.
That it is actually more natural for the same sexes to be with each other than the opposite sexes. I think that's why there's so much struggle. And I think there's a continuum. So, yeah. I
will say that in each of us there is a divine feminine and a divine masculine.
Absolutely, and you have to have both.
And you have to have
Absolutely.
both. You can't, if you deny one piece of it, your life is imbalanced.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you look back on the way certain tribes had lived, there was no technically like marriage. It was just a village and people loved.
Yep.
However that looks.
Yep.
And everyone raised the children together, and there was this no, like, I mean, I'm sure there was jealousy. I think it's an innate primal feeling, but you talk through it, you get over it, you have a fight or whatever it is, and then you move on. But I could definitely see what you mean, where there's definitely an innate, I think there's just an innate attraction to humans.
Yep. And I know that the Christian world doesn't want to look at this, but if they look at the Torah and they look at the conversations of David talking passionately about his soldiers, and there is a lot of same-sex love in our history, and I think it's just the paradigms make it a bad thing. So, and I think that this generation knows that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why this generation is testing the boundaries, and now they have a word for straight, cisgender, and I think it's great to shake things up and challenge norms, and and my relationship with men has improved because I don't want anything from them. I just like them. I don't need sex from them. I don't need money from them. I don't need, there's not any of the traditional, like, I have to procreate with you in order to make babies. I have a whole theory about why we have to procreate with men anyway, so.
Could be a whole other podcast.
We can talk about that later. But, and I think eventually we'll get to the point where that doesn't have to happen either.
We're kind of there.
Science is getting there.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it'll take a while, but so that, I mean, that's the journey, and I don't. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Any final piece of advice? Last words?
I got a tattoo here.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 months ago. It's the first one, and it's Hebrew because Jews are tribal, and we forgot that, but we come from the earth, and we created the moon calendar, and we were tribal up until we were kicked out of our homeland. And so I felt like I wanted my tribe's, initials on my arms, or the tribal language of Hebrew in my tattoo. So the tattoo means Nes Gadol Hayapayim, which means a great miracle happened here. And I love that. And it's actually how I got to that is a whole nother story for another time. But the bottom line is, I think that when we stop and look at ourselves as a miracle, and I mean, it's pretty remarkable that we're here at all.
Yeah.
And when you see yourself as miraculous, it ties into this conversation of self-love. And when you see life as miraculous, I mean, it just raises our consciousness to a different level. And it's too short. Life in this physical condition is too short to not be loved and adored and honored. And so I think if we could start to see ourselves as miraculous, that would change a lot of things, including what we eat and what we put into our body, and how things get to our plate, and what we do for work, and how we love who we love. And to see ourselves as a great miracle happening here. This is a great miracle happening here.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you, Leilani.
Yeah. Where can people find you if they want to be in contact with you?
Sure. I mean, if they Google my name, Sherry Platt, there's a lot of stuff out there on me. Right? All good, nothing bad. And I don't think anything bad. So you can go to thestepscareersystem.com. That's one word, the Steps Career. I mean, it's all in one URL, the Steps Career System. If you're looking for career counseling, and if you are looking for talent strategy, I have another website called chieftalentstrategist.com. And they can contact you.
I'll put those websites in the description, and
Great.
yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Bye-bye.